Thank you, Madam Chancellor. I'm Stephen Toop, and I have the honour to serve as President and Vice-Chancellor of the University of British Columbia. Every year at Congregation, UBC bestows honorary degrees upon individuals who, in the opinion of the university community, have fit the criteria of excellence and eminence in their chosen field. Marvin Storrow is one of those individuals, and I invite him now to step forward to receive his honorary degree. Madam Chancellor, UBC Law alumnus Marvin Storrow is an admired and visionary leader who has made remarkable contributions to the legal profession in Canada, to the legal community of British Columbia, and to the Faculty of Law at his university. A senior litigation counsel engaged in both civil and criminal law, Mr. Storrow has made almost 40 appearances before the Supreme Court of Canada. He was lead counsel in 3 cases, judged by Canadian legal scholars as among the most important cases in Canadian legal history concerning Aboriginal rights. His contributions were integral to numerous landmark cases involving the development of Aboriginal title and the fiduciary duties of the Canadian Crown. Mr. Storrow has been recognized with many prestigious awards, including the Georges A. Goyer QC Memorial Award for Distinguished Service and the UBC Alumni Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. Recently, he received the Law Society of British Columbia Award, which honors exceptional lifetime contributions, as well as the Lexpert Zenith Award, which acknowledges lawyers from across Canada who have demonstrated leadership through innovation for more than 40 years. Mr. Storrow's commitment to the legal community, however, extends beyond the courtroom. He served on the board of directors for the Justice Institute of British Columbia for 14 years, where he left a lasting legacy with the creation of a bursary to support Aboriginal students in their legal studies. He's been active in inspiring the next generation of legal leaders through the UBC Faculty of Law, where he established a scholarship for the student with the highest standing in the first year of the First Nations Legal Studies program. He's also chaired numerous reunions for his class of 1962, enabling his classmates to reconnect with their university and to engage directly with new generations of students. Madam Chancellor, in recognition of his many contributions to the legal profession and its future leaders, I ask you to confer the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa upon Marvin R.V. Storrow.
By authority of the Senate of this university, I confer upon you, Marvin R.V. Storrow, the title and degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
now gives me great pleasure to ask Dr. Storrow to say a few words.
Thank you. Madam Chancellor, Mr. President, professors and staff at this university, platform guests, honored guests, and in particular, new graduates. I congratulate all of you. And I want to add Mary Charles to my recognition here. She is one of my favorite people. I'm so honored that she gave us the Musqueam blessing this morning. I've got a lot of people I have to thank, but I don't think there's time to thank them. There's so many. But I'd like to thank my wonderful and supportive wife, Colette, my sons, Christopher and Jamie, for their excellent support, along with my sisters, Carol and Mary, my friends, and of course my many law partners, associates, students, and staff for their wonderful support of me over the past many, many years. I'm very honored to be given this degree today, and I'm very humbled by it. I graduated from this law school in 1962. Our dean was Dr. George Curtis, and I remember that at that time there were about 16,000 students at this school. Today there are more than 55,000, and each year this school becomes more highly ranked in the world, and it is one of the highest ranks and finest educational institutions today on this planet. I congratulate the president, the staff, the students, and all involved with making UBC one of the best in the world. I started off my university career by intending to become a brain surgeon. I know it's kind of funny now, isn't it? I was inspired to do so by Dr. William C. Gibson, who is a professor here and a very highly respected neurologist in Canada. At one point in time, I decided to become a lawyer instead, and frankly, I'm very happy that I did that. And I'm sure that there are many brains in British Columbia that are happy that I did that too. I had the distinct honor of being part of the 1962 law class. We started with 135 students in first year, ended up with 75. As you can see, it was easier to get into law school then than it was to get out. 11 of my classmates became judges. One of them became a cabinet minister for many years in Ottawa. And 4 of my classmates became judges of courts of appeal. 2 of them became chief justices of courts of appeal, which is very high in the court system, of course. And one of them, my dear childhood friend, Frank Iacobucci, became a judge of the Supreme Court of Canada. That is a distinct and very, very big honor. However, in our class of 75, only 3 were women. I think approximately 10 women were in the entire law school out of about 300 students. In the meantime, I can see for myself today, but women form about 50% of the law students at this school, maybe even more. And it's worth noting that Professor Beverly McLaughlin of the UBC Law School at one time is now the Chief Justice of Canada. And Ms. Kim Campbell, a law graduate of this school, became the Prime Minister of Canada. And of course, your dean is now Marianne Bobinski. That's a very good change in the culture of our profession. I'd like to try to leave behind 2 messages that have been matters that have influenced me at least, and that I think are worth some discussion. When I was at this university, 16,000 students, I think there were 2 First Nations students here. I may be out by a few, but there weren't very many. Today there are about 1,100, I'm told. 51 at the law school, 18 of whom are here today. That's a wonderful, wonderful improvement. But there's more work to be done there. There are about 1 million First Nations members in Canada, and our education system has, generally speaking, sadly neglected telling our young students about the history of First Nations and encouraging our governments and First Nations to get more education. Most First Nations people in British Columbia and in Canada were brought up under the force of the so-called Indian Act. That statute was created in 1876, 138 years ago now, and it has had a great influence, either directly or indirectly, on the cultures of First Nations and of the attitude of Canadians towards First Nations. Let me give you examples of some of the sections in the Indian Act over the years. In the early Indian Act, like most statutes, it defined some words. The word person was defined as anyone except an Indian. Person was anyone except an Indian. Now that's not very nice, but that was in the statute. Indian women were not allowed to vote in banned elections. Why? I don't know. It shouldn't have been any of the business of the government. As we know, Indian children had to go to the school chosen by the government. A child living north of Prince George might have to go to a school in Alert Bay. A child living outside of Edmonton might have to go to a school outside of Regina. And, of course, we know a lot more now about the residential school situation. Until 1951, First Nations were not allowed to have their own advisors. First Nations men and women could join Canadian Armed Forces, serve in wars for us, but they couldn't vote in federal elections until 1961. Why? You've probably heard the expression potlatch. That was a kind of ceremony that led to tranquility and gift-giving amongst First Nations. Probably goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. For some reason, in 1884, the Government of Canada banned potlatches. Why would they do that? They were banned for 67 years. It's like banning somebody from going to church. And I don't know why they did that. In 1917, the government, under the Fisheries Act, passed a bylaw which said that everyone except Indians can sell fish. Now, Indian people, First Nations people, are certainly on the West Coast here, for decades, centuries, had traded, bartered, and sold fish amongst themselves and amongst other First Nations people. The Bella Bella band probably would sell to the Haida Nation, for example. They were banned from selling fish. Why would the government do that? So, in my opinion, the effect of the Indian Act and the general historical attitude that has formed part of our Canadian culture still has an abstract and negative effect on First Nations. We need to put an end to this. This university, having special courses involving First Nations, is long overdue and has had a great effect on leveling the educational playing field amongst First Nations in Canada, and UBC should be very proud of this. I'm informed that in the medical school here at UBC prior to 1955, 2 First Nations students graduated. However, I'm very pleased to have found out that there are currently 29 Indigenous students in the Faculty of Medicine, and 49 have graduated from it. I want to say something very quickly about the Musqueam First Nation, which of course is living about 600 yards from where we are today. It had 400 people on its reserve in the past roughly 40 years. As I told you before, First Nations couldn't sue the federal government unless they got permission to get advisors. And of course, the federal government had to give the permission, so why would they give permission to be sued? This First Nation has been involved with 3 cases that went before the Supreme Court of Canada, and as President Toup has mentioned, these 3 cases have been ranked among the 3 most important cases of any kind of case in the history of Canada. They're in the top 15 of all of the cases. Now that's pretty good for a small First Nation who have had the history that that First Nation and all others have had in Canada. I just want to say, lastly, that when you get out into the public, if you're practicing law or medicine or whatever it is, try to give something back to the community. You won't regret it. You'll make a difference. And keep in mind that if you're practicing medicine or law, you're not doing so as of right. You're doing so because of your extraordinarily fine education and because you're practicing with the permission of a statute. In other words, indirectly with the permission of the public. In my opinion, and it's just an opinion, that's a reason to give back to the public. And you can do it. And you will not regret it for a moment, and you will receive a lot of gratification from doing so. Legal aid work by lawyers, for example, is extremely important, becoming more important because the cost of law rights these days is very, very high. Most people can't afford it, to be very honest about it. And as a profession, we've got to find a way of dealing with that. Medical people should try to help the indigenous people and people that need help. As Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, every calling is great when greatly pursued. I'd like to pass on one thought that was given to me many years ago and which I've come to deeply think is very correct. There was a lawyer in Toronto named John J. Robinette, QC. He was highly respected, he was highly gifted, and he was a very nice person. I asked him once, what is the most important thing a professional person can have? And without hesitation, he said, judgment. Judgment is 80% of what we do. And I think you may find that that's pretty correct as you get involved with your day-to-day work. Finally, I want to again thank this university and its Senate for this honor and to wish all of the graduates here today my sincerest congratulations and best wishes for a splendid future, and to say to all of the graduates, it's up to you. To a mest. Thank you.